you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. At least 3 people, including the chairman of the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission, killed following an explosion in a gas plant in Jukun local government area of Kaduna State. Nigeria Air Force says scores of insurgents killed in the Sambisa Forest area in Borno State vows continued airstrikes to eliminate remnants of the insurgents in the northeast. How has Nigeria fared on the international space in the past year? That's our focus tonight as we continue our assessment of government activities in 2019. And thousands march in a funeral procession for the Iranian general Qasim Soleimani, assassinated in a U.S. airstrike. Plus, business and sports. For more information on our top stories and others, please visit our website. It's channelstv.com. YouTube.com/channelsweb has videos of all our shows. Now let's look at how Nigeria fared on the international scene last year, and we are being joined on the news at 10 by a former Minister of External Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. A pleasure having you with us, especially today. It's your birthday, so I begin by saying happy birthday, Prof. Prof, how would you rate Nigeria's performance in the international space in year 2019?
Well, I mean, it is difficult to start rating countries, especially when the issues are still ongoing. I listened to your previous review, and the issues that were raised there are still the issues that will face us in 2020. What happens to Nigerians in other African countries, which comes under the rubric of the phobia attacks in South Africa, is still there. The closure of our borders is something that impacts our neighbors, and that also still impacts this question of the currency, which ECOWAS agreed to, and France, towards the end of last year, seemed to have pulled the rug from under the feet of ECOWAS, and especially Nigeria, by adopting the name of the same currency and getting their own countries, the French-speaking African countries, to take that. The issue of security all across our northern borders, starting with Boko Haram in the northeast, and when you look at the activities of the various manifestations of ISIS all across to the northwest, are still issues which we are going to face. So we have security issues, you have economic issues, and you have issues dealing with the way Nigerians are treated in other parts of Africa. And these are issues we will still confront in the year 2020. So there are ongoing issues to which we have not found a permanent solution to, not because we haven't tried, but the measures that we have put in place and the agreements that we have signed are still to bear fruit.
Now, you mentioned this number of issues Nigeria had to deal with last year. How would you assess the country's role on these issues in the terms of the nation being touted as with a leadership capacity?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat yourself. I really can't hear you clearly.
Prof, There were a number of issues which you mentioned that the country had to deal with last year. So how would you assess Nigeria's role on these issues in terms of the nation's touted leadership capacity?
Well, number one, the issue of, let me start with the economic issue of the currency in ECOWAS. You have to ask yourself, why did France, in collaboration with the Francophonies, decide to adopt the same name for the currency which ECOWAS had agreed to and adopt that as their own? To me, it is, some people will say, perhaps Nigeria should have put its foot down. And it's not too late for Nigeria to simply say, this is not acceptable. We cannot accept a currency being used in West Africa that is being moderated by a non-African country. It is simply an attempt by France through the back door to continue to checkmate Nigerian influence in ECOWAS. And I think Nigeria simply has to say this is not acceptable to it. Number two, the strategy that's been adopted in dealing with security measures in the northern part of our country needs more cooperation, more sustained and intense cooperation in terms of activities by our security forces, in terms of activities by the immigration forces to checkmate the movement down from the Sahel by, as I said, the various groups. It's not something Nigeria can do alone, but Nigeria, with the kind of resources that's available to Nigeria to put behind its own security forces, we really need to accept that eventually Nigeria is in the target for this, for these terrorist groups that are moving down, and that we are going to have to bear the brunt. So we might as well again get cooperation with Niger, with Chad, and with Cameroon to tackle these people. So far, what has been done, even by France, is not sufficient.
Now, Prof, as a former minister, can you decipher Nigeria's policy in our international engagement currently?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Prof, I was asking if you could decipher Nigeria's policy in our international engagement currently. Prof, I was asking you, can you decipher Nigeria's policy in our international engagement currently?
Can I what?
Can you look at Nigeria's current policy in our international engagement currently, being a former minister? And because a lot of people have been saying that Nigeria's foreign policy has been a major concern for a number of years.
I'm not prepared to do a running commentary on the foreign policy posture of this present regime. Obviously, Nigerians are doing a continuous assessment of what Nigeria should be doing within the international atmosphere in order to advance Nigerian interests. I've often taken the position that I don't feel comfortable doing an assessment of what my successors in office are doing. I did my own bit as a foreign minister when I was there. Probably I also showed irritation at other former foreign ministers doing a running commentary on what I was doing. So I just feel that we should allow the government of the day to do what it wants to do in terms of positioning Nigeria within the international atmosphere, and we leave history to judge what it's, we leave history to do the judgment, the final judgment on the activities of each administration.
Former Minister of External Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, it was a pleasure sharing your thoughts with us on the News at 10. And once again, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
When the News at 10 returns, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission announces over 70% increase in electricity tariffs, orders immediate implementation of directive by distribution companies. That's on Business News. Join us again.